My name is Natalie Hayes, and I'm 31 years old. 3 days ago, I found out I wasn't a girlfriend. I was a prop in someone else's marriage. If you scroll back 18 months, though, I didn't look like the other woman. I looked like a woman who'd finally gotten lucky. I met him at a coffee shop, of course. Where else do so-called modern love stories start? It was one of those rainy Tuesdays when every table is taken by people working remotely, headphones in, laptops open, pretending they aren't eavesdropping on each other. He was sitting at the only open spot left, near the window, reading a book I loved. I noticed the cover first, then the underlines, then the way he laughed under his breath at a line I knew by heart. "You know that part's going to wreck you in 3 chapters," I said as I passed his table. He looked up, surprised, then grinned. "You've read it?" We fell into conversation the way people do in stories and almost never do in real life. His name was Kyle, 29, remote tech consultant. The kind of job that sounds fake but pays real money. He told me he traveled a lot for client meetings, that his schedule was weird, that relationships were hard with all the flights and hotels. I told him I worked in marketing and lived 10 minutes away. By the time I left with my to-go cup, my phone had a new number in it, and my chest had that light, fizzy feeling I hadn't had since my early 20s. For the first time in a long time, I let myself feel hopeful. Our first date was 2 days later. Our second was that weekend. Within a month, we had our booth at a bar, our Thai place, our Sunday morning pancakes. There were things that didn't quite add up, even then. We always went to my apartment. His was a nightmare, tiny, old, and with a paranoid roommate who hated guests. He joked about it so often I started joking too. "Your roommate sounds like a cryptid," I teased once. "I'm starting to think he doesn't exist." "He exists," Kyle said, laughing. "You'd hate him." He traveled a lot. Sometimes he'd vanish for 3 or 4 days, then text me late at night from some hotel, claiming jet lag. But he would also send pictures. Airport terminals, conference rooms, city streets. It all looked real enough. And we texted constantly when he was away. "Good morning. How's your day? This meme made me think of you." Voice notes. Random photos of his meals. It never felt like he disappeared. When he was in town, he was present, thoughtful. He'd show up at my door with my favorite chocolate or a random plant he saw and thought would look cute in your kitchen. He remembered every story I told him, down to the offhand comments about my childhood dog or my sister's weird obsession with true crime podcasts. He fit into my life so neatly that I never thought to ask why I didn't fit into his. 18 months. That's how long I moved around his lies without ever bumping into their edges. 3 nights ago, we were on my couch. It was stupidly ordinary, which is maybe why I replay it so much. I'd cooked. Nothing fancy. Pasta, a jarred sauce I added garlic and chili flakes to, so it felt less like cheating. We'd eaten in front of the TV, then ended up tangled under a blanket, some crime show murmuring in the background while Kyle scrolled his phone and I half watched, half dozed against his shoulder. At some point, he went to the bathroom, leaving his phone on the coffee table. The screen lit up. For a second, I didn't register what I was seeing. It was just a rectangle of light in a dark room. Then my brain caught up. Caller ID wife. The word looked wrong, like it had been dropped in from someone else's life. My first thought was, don't snoop. My second thought was, wife? My hand moved before I could decide which thought to listen to. I picked up the phone and answered. "Hello," I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to another person. There was a small burst of background noise, then a woman's voice, tired, familiar, like this was the millionth time she'd made this call. "Hey," she said, "when are you coming home? Emma's asking for you. She won't go to bed until you say goodnight." I didn't answer. For a heartbeat, all I could hear was my own pulse, thudding in my ears, and the faint echo of the TV behind me. "Hello?" the woman said again, sharper. "Kyle, are you there?" I swallowed. "This isn't Kyle." Silence. "Who is this?" she asked. "My name is Natalie." My throat felt tight. "Who is this?" Another silence, longer. Then, "I'm Brooke, his wife." The word landed like the physical hit. I think I said, "Oh," but my brain was already sprinting ahead, sprinting backward, trying to refile the last 18 months into a shape that made sense. Wife. Not ex, not separated, not it's complicated. Wife. There was a soft click from the hallway bathroom. Door latch, light switch. Kyle was coming back. I stood up. "Where is he?" Brooke asked. Her voice was shaking now. "Where is my husband?" He's at my apartment, I said. I'll text you the address. I didn't wait for her answer. I hung up, dropped the phone back on the coffee table like it burned, and turned just as Kyle walked back into the living room, wiping his hands on a towel. The easy, familiar smile on his face froze when he saw me standing, arms folded, his phone glowing on the table between us. "What's wrong?" he asked, a little laugh in his voice, like maybe this was a joke. "Your wife called," I said. The laugh died. He didn't move, didn't speak. For a second, we were just two people in a room full of lies staring at each other. "That's not," he started. "She asked when you were coming home," I cut in. My voice was surprisingly calm. "She said your daughter won't go to bed without saying goodnight to you." Color drained from his face. "Natalie, listen." "How old is she?" I asked. "Your daughter. How old is Emma?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. "4," he finally said, almost whispering. 4. A whole little person. A whole life. I felt something inside me tilt. The couch, the blanket, the half-empty wine glasses, everything blurred like a camera going out of focus. "Get out," I said. "Natalie, please." He stepped toward me, hands up like I was something fragile he didn't want to break. "It's not what you think." "You're married," I said. "You have a 4-year-old daughter. For 18 months, you've been here, in my bed, in my life, making pancakes in my kitchen, and you never mentioned them." My voice went flat. "It's exactly what I think." He tried again. "Brooke and I, it's over. We've been done for years. We're basically roommates who share a kid. I was going to tell you, I swear, I just needed—" "Time?" I snapped. 18 months wasn't enough time? His jaw clenched. His eyes were wet. "I love you," he said. "I didn't want to lose you." The words hit me sideways. Somewhere, in another version of my life, they might have meant something. In this one, they sounded like another script he'd practiced. "I already texted your wife my address," I said. "She's on her way." Panic flickered across his face. "You had no right to do that." I laughed, a short, ugly sound. "I had no right? You made me your secret, Kyle. You turned me into the other woman without asking my opinion first." He reached for my hand. I stepped back. "Please," he whispered. "Just let me explain when Brooke isn't involved. She complicates everything. I'll fix this. I'll talk to her. We'll separate. We'll make it clean. We can't still anything," I said. "Take your stuff and get out. You can wait for your wife on the sidewalk." For a second, I thought he might refuse, might dig in, argue, twist this into yet another thing that was somehow my fault. Instead, he grabbed his jacket, his keys, his charger. He moved around the room with frantic, jerky motions, snatching up pieces of a life that had never really belonged to me. At the door, he turned back. "Natalie, I—" "Don't," I said. "Whatever you're about to say, I've heard enough lies for one night." He hesitated, then stepped into the hallway. I closed the door behind him and locked it. The apartment felt too quiet. The TV was still playing, some detective interrogating some suspect about some crime, all of it suddenly ridiculous. I turned it off. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the indentation on the couch where he'd been sitting 5 minutes earlier, the blanket that still held his warmth, the 2 glasses, one with his fingerprints on the stem. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I'm outside. Brooke. I went to the window and peeked through the curtain. A woman stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand. Early 30s, hair pulled back into a messy bun, wearing an oversized hoodie and leggings, like she'd left the house in a hurry. There was a car idling at the curb behind her, a child's car seat visible in the back. Kyle was on the other side of the street, hands on his hips, pacing. For a second, I almost opened the door and invited her in. I wanted to hug her, apologize to her, scream with her, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I texted back, "He's across the street. I'm sorry." A moment later, I watched her cross to him. Their voices were muffled through the glass, but the body language said everything. Her shoulders stiff, his hands out in that pleading way I knew too well. I stepped back from the window. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my own phone. I opened Kyle's contact, hovered over the delete button, then stopped. Instead, I opened Instagram and typed his name. His profile was public. Of course it was. I scrolled. There they were. Wedding photos from 6 years ago, a smiling younger Brooke in white, Kyle in a suit, their faces pressed together like they believed in forever. Baby pictures, family vacations, photos of him on the couch I'd never seen, in a kitchen I'd never visit, holding his daughter while she slept. And threaded in between those, like barbed wire through soft fabric, were posts I recognized, restaurants I'd dragged him to, a vineyard we'd gone to together, a hotel lobby I could still smell. The captions were things like treating myself and self-care Saturday, carefully cropped so I wasn't visible. He'd documented our relationship as solo adventures while his wife and daughter scrolled past, none the wiser. My stomach turned. My phone buzzed again, this time with his name. Nat, please, let me explain. Don't do anything crazy. I swear I was going to tell you. I love you. Don't throw us away over this. Over this. Like this was a parking ticket, a missed call, not an entire secret life. I stared at his message until the words blurred, then typed back one sentence. Don't contact me again. He replied instantly. Natalie, please, it's not what it looks like. Brooke and I haven't been a real couple in years. I stayed for Emma. I love you. Only you. Just hear me out. I blocked his number. Then I put my phone face down on the table, sat on the floor in the middle of my living room, and finally let myself really understand. For 18 months, the man I loved walked out of my apartment, drove home to his wife and his daughter, and I never knew. I wasn't just heartbroken. I felt erased. The days that followed felt like a strange fog, each hour bending into the next with no clear line between one and the other. I kept expecting to wake up, expecting the truth to unravel like a bad dream, but instead, everything remained painfully real. The text from Kyle came first, then the frantic voicemails. He wanted to explain, to make things right, to talk things through. I ignored every single one. Brooke, on the other hand, didn't waste time. She found me. Or rather, she made sure I found her. It was a Saturday afternoon when I got her first message. My phone buzzed, a single text. We need to talk. I know who you are. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at the coffee pot. I hadn't slept the night before. Too much thinking, too much replaying. But when I read her message, I felt my whole body go still. I hadn't expected her to reach out. I wasn't sure what I thought would happen, but I hadn't imagined that this would be it. Her reaching out, her demanding answers. I hadn't known what to expect from a woman whose entire life had just been laid out before her, pieced together like a puzzle I didn't even know I was part of. I typed back, I think we've both been lied to. And I don't know if there's anything left to say, but you can come over. I'm here. The wait felt endless, though only an hour passed before there was a knock on my door. She didn't ring the bell, just knocked, almost gently, like she was testing to see if I'd answer. When I opened the door, Brooke stood there in jeans and a jacket, her hands clasped in front of her. There was no fury in her eyes, no pleading or desperation, just a quiet, hollow sadness, a kind of weary understanding. I don't know what to say to you, she said, voice breaking the silence. I've spent the last few days going over everything, trying to put the pieces together, and I'm not even angry at you. I didn't know what to say either. I didn't know what kind of comfort I was supposed to offer her, especially knowing the role I played in tearing her life apart. I stepped back, opening the door wider. Come in. She walked past me into the living room, looking around like someone trying to get a sense of a place she had no connection to. You really didn't know? She asked, her voice low. About us? I shook my head. I didn't. He never told me about you, about Emma. The mention of the child made something in my chest tighten. It's like he erased you both from his life when he was with me. Brooke took a deep breath and sat on the couch, the same place I had sat just days ago with Kyle, laughing at some stupid story I didn't even remember anymore. She glanced at the coffee table where Kyle's phone had once been. He told me he was done, that we were over. He said we were just coexisting, waiting for the right time to separate. I believed him. Her voice cracked on the last sentence, and I could see the years of frustration and hurt beneath the calm exterior. She wasn't angry, but she was carrying the weight of every lie, every betrayal, every missed opportunity to end the mess before it went too far. I guess I should have seen it, she continued. The nights he wasn't there, the business trips, the way he'd always keep his phone on him. He told me things had changed between us, that we'd just fallen into a routine, but I never thought, not like this. Not that he'd be seeing someone else, not that he'd lie to me for 18 months. I could feel the knot in my stomach tighten. It was impossible to avoid the weight of her pain, the depth of the trust she had placed in him, the lies she had lived with, the life she had built on false promises. I didn't know about you, I repeated. I didn't know he had a wife or a daughter. I thought we had something real. But this, it's not real. And now it's just a mess. She nodded, her eyes heavy. It's a mess for both of us. A silence stretched between us. Neither of us knew how to fill it. Neither of us knew how to undo the last 18 months. We were both just two women, two strangers, connected by the same lie. Neither of us had asked for this, but here we were, sitting in a room where our lives were tangled together in ways I never thought possible. Finally, Brooke pulled out her phone. I've been looking at everything, checking the things I should have checked sooner. The receipts, the texts, the lies. I know now. About the trips he claimed were business, but were really weekends with you. The dinners, the hotels. I felt sick, hearing it all out loud, seeing it for what it really was. I hadn't known how deep the deception went, but now it was impossible to deny. I don't know why I didn't see it, she continued. Maybe I didn't want to. Maybe it was easier to believe the lie than face the truth. She paused, then looked up at me. But I want you to know something. He never mentioned you to me, not once. It's like I didn't even exist in his life when he was with you. The air in the room felt heavy. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say to that. He said the same thing about you, I replied quietly. I didn't know anything about your life, about Emma. I thought he was just another guy, just another relationship, but I was wrong. We both fell silent again, each of us wrestling with the weight of the truth. We had both been played, both of us made to feel like we were the only one in the world, while in reality, we were just pawns in a game Kyle had created for his own benefit. And just as I thought I might crumble under the pressure, Brooke looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something strange, something I couldn't quite place. I'm filing for divorce, she said matter-of-factly. I've been speaking to a lawyer. I have to, for Emma, for myself. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of relief. I wasn't alone in this mess anymore. I wasn't the only one holding the pieces of a broken relationship. Do you want me to testify? I asked quietly. If it goes to court? She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Yes, if you're willing. We have to show what he really is. He doesn't get to lie his way out of this. I nodded back, the weight of what she was asking sinking in. I'm with you, I said, whatever it takes. Brooke smiled faintly. I think we're both going to need a lot of time to heal from this, but maybe, just maybe, we'll come out of it stronger. I wasn't sure if I believed her, but I wanted to. I wanted to believe that somehow we could both walk away from this mess and rebuild what had been lost. We stood up, both of us moving toward the door. Brooke turned back for one last look, then gave me a tight, hesitant smile. Good luck, she said softly. Same to you, I replied, watching her walk out of my apartment, the door closing softly behind her. I stood there for a long time, the silence settling back in. But this time it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't just a mess anymore. It was a beginning. 3 days after Brooke left my apartment, the knocking started again. It was a hesitant knock at first, 3 short taps. Like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure if they should be there. For a moment, I froze where I stood in my hallway, a half-folded blanket in my arms, wondering if Brooke had returned. But the moment the second knock came, louder, more urgent, I knew it wasn't her. I didn't even need to look through the peephole. I knew that rhythm. I knew the impatience. I knew the anxiety tucked behind every thud. Kyle! I opened the door only an inch, keeping the chain hooked. His face was inches from mine, pale and frantic, eyes rimmed red, like he hadn't slept in days. Natalie, please, he said, voice shaky. I just need 5 minutes. Just 5. No, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. You need to leave. He swallowed, stepping closer, his breath unsteady. I can't leave things like this. Not after everything we had. You know me, Nat. You know I wouldn't hurt you on purpose. Somewhere a part of me flinched at the nickname he had used for months. Nat, like I was someone special, someone exclusive. Intent doesn't erase consequences, I said quietly. He ran a hand through his hair, gripping it like he was trying to hold his skull together. Just let me explain without Brooke poisoning everything. She twists things. She always has. Don't do that, I cut in sharply. Don't turn your wife into the villain to make yourself look better. She had nothing to do with the lies you told both of us. His eyes hardened for a split second, then softened again. It was like watching someone cycle through personalities. Charm, panic, anger, guilt, like flipping through channels too fast. Nat, I'm drowning. Everything is spiraling. Brooke kicked me out. Emma won't talk to me. Her family hates me. And you, his voice cracked. You're the only person I ever really connected with. A wave of nausea rolled through me. How many times did you use that line? I asked. How many women heard that same voice, that same tone, that same breath of desperation? His mouth tightened. You don't understand. My marriage has been dead for years. Years. I stayed for Emma. For stability. For routine. But you? I shut my eyes. There it was. The script. I love you, he whispered. I never loved Brooke like I loved you. You brought something out of me, something real. Real? I repeated, opening my eyes. Real is showing up. Real is honesty. Real isn't juggling two lives and hoping neither one finds out. He shook his head desperately. I never meant for it to go that far. I swear, it started as an escape, and then it became everything. I just needed time to figure out how to leave Brooke without breaking Emma's world apart. You know how complicated that is. You know how hard. Don't drag her into this. My voice broke in spite of myself. You don't get to use your daughter as a shield. He swallowed and stepped back, leaning against the railing, looking exhausted. I should have told you. I know. But I was scared of losing you, of losing Emma, of losing everything. That's the problem, I said. You wanted both. And you made that my problem without asking. I reached for the door, preparing to close it entirely. Wait, Natalie, just hear me out. I can fix this. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'm filing for separation. We can start over. Clean slate, you and me. I laughed. A quiet, humorless sound. You think a clean slate exists after 18 months of lies? His face fell. Natalie, he whispered, broken, please don't give up on us. There was no us, I said. Not really. There was you, managing a double life so smoothly, I never thought to question it. And there was me, too naive to realize I was living in a story you curated. Don't say that. It's the truth. He looked like he might cry. For a moment, some stupid, wounded part of me almost reached for him. Almost. But then I thought of Brooke's face, of Emma's voice on the phone, of the way my world cracked in half while his barely wobbled. Goodbye, Kyle, I said, voice steady. I shut the door. He didn't leave right away. I could hear him standing there, pacing, muttering under his breath, occasionally knocking once or twice more, but I didn't open the door again. Eventually, his footsteps faded down the hall, and he was gone, or so I thought. 2 hours later, I was sitting on my couch when my phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. You won't believe the receipts I found. A chill went down my spine. She wasn't speaking metaphorically. 2 hours later, I was at her place. Her apartment was small but warm, lived in. Toys on the floor, a laundry basket half folded, a framed photo of her and Emma smiling on the beach. There was no sign of Kyle anywhere, not even in the background of any pictures. He always hated photos, she explained, noticing my glance. Said he wasn't photogenic. She snorted. Now I think he just didn't want evidence. She motioned for me to sit at the kitchen table, and then she dropped the pile. Receipts, statements, bank transactions, hotel bookings he'd labeled as work travel, restaurant charges for places I recognized, even the vineyard weekend, the one I thought he had paid for entirely on his own. He used our joint card, she said flatly, for all of it. My chest tightened. I didn't know. I thought he always insisted he'd treat me sometimes. Brooke nodded without judgment. He was using me to spoil you, and he told me those charges were for client meals, travel, training classes, even repairs for my sister's car. I blinked. Your sister's car? Brooke shrugged. Doesn't even own one. I rubbed my forehead, stunned. He really thought he could keep this up forever. He did keep it up, she said, for 18 months, and the only reason it collapsed is because you answered the phone. I sat back in my chair, letting the truth wash over me in ugly waves. This wasn't just cheating. This was deception woven into every part of his life. He had turned both of us into caretakers of two different halves of his identity, and neither of us had known about the other. I'm filing next week, Brooke said, her voice quiet but firm. My lawyer says adultery, financial misuse, and abandonment are enough to press for custody and assets. Custody. The word twisted something inside me. Are you okay? I asked. She smiled, but it was small and tired. I will be. Emma's my priority, but I'm not going to let him rewrite the story to make me the difficult wife, not this time. I'll help however I can, I said. If you need a statement, if you need me to testify, I'll do it. Brooke nodded. We'll need everything. He's already spinning the narrative, telling his mother I was cold, that our intimacy issues pushed him away, that I drove him to this. I grimaced. He told me you were over, that you were basically roommates, that he stayed for Emma. Of course he did, Brooke said. He's always been great at half-truths. They sound honest enough that you don't look for the missing pieces. She exhaled slowly, her expression softening. I'm glad we talked, she said. As awful as this is, I'm glad I'm not alone in it. I nodded. Me too. For the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel like I was standing alone in the wreckage. I felt like I had an ally. Not in revenge, not in anger, but in truth. And the truth was finally coming to the surface. Brooke's lawyer moved fast. Within a week, the legal process was already underway, and the calm veneer Kyle had tried to maintain began to crack. He texted Brooke nonstop, begging, accusing, negotiating, then begging again. When that failed, he tried contacting me from different numbers, blocked each time he attempted it. But the real unraveling didn't begin until the custody hearing was scheduled. I hadn't planned to be involved directly, but Brooke asked me to come with her, to sit in the hallway, to be a familiar face, to anchor her if she felt herself falling apart. And I agreed. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to see him face consequences, but because she deserved not to walk into that room alone. The courthouse lobby was brighter than I expected, sunlight pouring through glass walls, bouncing off the marble floors. Cold, impersonal. A place where truth and lies became paperwork. Brooke sat beside me, wearing a dark blazer and her hair pulled back. Not to look intimidating, she simply said she didn't want anything touching her face while she cried. "I'm not going to pretend I'm strong today," she whispered. "I just have to be honest." "You already are," I said softly. 2 seats down, a man in a crumpled suit paced back and forth. Kyle. His tie was crooked. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he finally noticed me, sitting next to Brooke, his eyes widened. He walked over immediately. Natalie. His voice cracked halfway through my name. "Why are you here?" I raised an eyebrow. "You really need to ask that?" His jaw clenched. "You don't belong here. This is between me and Brooke." "You made it between all 3 of us," Brooke said quietly, not even looking at him. Kyle turned to her, desperation clawing at his expression. "Brooke, please, don't do this to our family. Don't weaponize the courts. You know how much Emma needs me." Brooke's laugh came out sharp, strangled. "She needed you for the last year, too. Where were you then? At her bedtime? Her doctor appointments? Her school events? Or in Natalie's apartment pretending you were single?" He flinched. Before he could speak again, the courtroom clerk called their names. "This is it," Brooke whispered. I squeezed her hand before she stood up. "You've got this." She nodded once, steeling herself, and followed the clerk through the doors. Kyle paused, turning to me with a haunted expression. "Please don't talk," he whispered. "Not today. Don't make this worse." I met his eyes, steady. I'm not the one who made it worse. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. I wasn't allowed in the courtroom itself, but I didn't need to be there to know how it played out. I could see the aftermath written across Brooke's face when she walked out an hour later. Her shoulders shook, her hands trembled, but her chin was lifted. She looked triumphant. Broken, yes. Exhausted, absolutely. But triumphant. I stood. "What happened?" She sank onto the bench beside me, letting out a breath that sounded like something escaping her chest after years of being held hostage. "He tried to paint me as the distant wife," she said, voice raw. "Said I didn't contribute enough to the marriage. Said I neglected him emotionally." My stomach tightened. "And the judge believed that?" Brooke shook her head. "No. The judge asked for evidence." She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of organized papers, receipts, daycare sign-in logs, pediatrician records. Proof. "He told the judge he was the primary parent," she continued, a hollow laugh escaping, "and the judge asked him to list Emma's medications." She paused. "He couldn't name one." My chest tightened, and when the judge asked him how many bedtimes he'd handled in the last 6 months, she swallowed. He couldn't answer that either, because the answer was maybe 5. She rubbed her forehead. Then the judge asked about the business trips he claimed he needed for work. Brooke slid forward the bank statements, the ones showing charges for dinners, hotels, trips he took with me. And after that, Brooke inhaled, steadying herself. It all snowballed. My lawyer presented the messages, the overlapping timelines, his fake itineraries, the money he charged to our joint card. My throat tightened painfully. "I'm so sorry." Brooke shook her head. "Don't be. This is his fault, not yours." She leaned back, eyes damp but fierce. "He lost custody, Natalie. Primary custody." Her voice cracked on the last word. "The judge granted me full custody and gave him supervised visitation every other weekend until he completes parenting classes and therapy. A beat passed, and he has to pay back the money he used, every dollar." I let out a slow breath. Relief, sadness, something bittersweet. Because while he deserved consequences, part of me still remembered the version of him I thought was real. Brooke continued softer. "You know what the worst thing is?" She blinked rapidly, trying to keep the tears contained. He looked at me like I betrayed him, like I ruined our family. I shook my head slowly. He's rewriting the story so he doesn't have to look at himself. People like him, they need to be the victim. It's how they survive their own guilt. Brooke didn't respond. She just leaned forward, elbows on her knees, hands trembling. I thought I'd fall apart in there, she whispered. I thought I'd freeze, or cry, or make a fool of myself. But when he tried to twist the truth, something in me snapped. I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I didn't do this to hurt him, she said. I did it to protect Emma. I nodded gently. And you did. We sat there in the echoing courthouse corridor, two women who had once stood in opposite corners of the same lie, now sharing the weight of its aftermath. Brooke finally exhaled. It's over, she whispered. But even as she said it, I knew better. This kind of story never ends neatly. Not when someone like Kyle is involved. And I was right, because half an hour later, as we walked toward the exit, Kyle rounded the corner, anger radiating off him like heat. This isn't fair, he shouted, voice cracking. Brooke, you manipulated the whole thing. You made me look like a monster. No, Brooke answered softly. You made yourself look like a monster. He turned to me next, eyes venomous, voice shaking. And you, he spat. I trusted you, I loved you, and you turned against me. I stepped forward, meeting his gaze without an inch of fear. And you lied to me, I said, for 18 months. Consequences aren't betrayal, they're reality. Something in his face twisted, rage, humiliation, disbelief. For a moment, he looked like he might lunge toward me, but the security guard down the hall shifted, clearing his throat loudly. Kyle stepped back. This isn't over, he muttered. Brooke's voice was steady. Yes, it is. And it was, not because he accepted it, but because the truth had finally overpowered the lies. Later that night, Brooke and I sat on her living room floor, Emma asleep in the next room. We weren't celebrating. We weren't laughing. We weren't even talking much. We were just breathing. Breathing like women who had been underwater for far too long. You saved me today, Brooke whispered. I shook my head. You saved yourself. She met my gaze, eyes soft. Maybe we saved each other. Maybe we did. Because sometimes the only people who truly understand your trauma are the ones who survived the same storm. 3 months passed. 3 long, strange, unexpectedly quiet months. No chaos, no screaming voicemails, no surprise knocks on my door, no heart in my throat dread every time my phone buzzed. Just life, my life. For the first time in a long time, it didn't revolve around someone else's needs, excuses, or disappearances. I went to work, I cooked dinner, I watched TV without planning for someone else's arrival. I slept through the night. Healing wasn't cinematic or dramatic. It was slow, subtle, like waking up from a fever dream 1 degree at a time. But then one afternoon, I got a text from Brooke. Emma's 5th birthday is this weekend. Just family and close friends. You should come. I stared at the message for a long moment. If my life were a movie, this would be the part where I said no, where I kept my distance, where the other woman faded into anonymity and Brooke rebuilt her life alone. But that wasn't real life, and the truth was, after everything we'd been through, the idea of her celebrating that day without support didn't feel right. So I replied, I'll be there. Brooke's house felt lighter the moment I stepped inside. Not happier. There were still echoes of everything she'd endured, but lighter. Like someone had opened a window and let the stale air escape. Colorful balloons were taped to the walls. A banner that said, Happy Birthday. Emma hung a little crookedly in the kitchen, clearly decorated by a tired mom doing her best. The smell of chocolate cake filled the air. People bustled around comfortably. Brooke's parents, her sister, a couple of neighbors. Real people. Ordinary people. People who showed up. When Brooke spotted me standing near the entryway, she smiled. A real smile. You made it, she said, pulling me into a tight hug. Wouldn't miss it, I replied. Her eyes softened. Thank you. For everything. Before I could respond, a small voice called out from behind her. Mommy, is that the lady you said helped us? Emma. I'd never met her before, but I knew her in a strange way. Every photo, every voicemail, every detail Brooke had shared in Heartbreak. She looked up at me with curious eyes, clutching a small toy dinosaur. Brooke knelt beside her. Yes, baby, this is Natalie. Emma considered me for a moment. Then, in the way kids do when they sense someone is safe, she stepped forward and held up her dinosaur. His tail broke yesterday, she said solemnly. I crouched down to her level. I think we can fix that. Her face lit up. And just like that, the heaviness in my chest loosened, a tiny, unexpected moment of peace. Later, while the kids chased each other in the backyard, Brooke and I stood by the sliding glass door, sipping juice from mismatched paper cups. She looks happy, I said. She is, Brooke replied, happier than she's been in a long time. I hesitated. How are you doing? Brooke let out a long breath. Good. Surprisingly good, actually. Therapy helps. My lawyer helped. My family's been amazing. And she glanced sideways at me. Having someone who understands helps too. I smiled. We survived the same train wreck. Exactly, she said with a soft laugh. Trauma bonding at its finest. We both laughed at that. Really laughed. For the first time since everything fell apart. Where's Kyle now? I asked quietly. Brooke's expression dimmed slightly, but not painfully. More like someone remembering a chapter that no longer defined them. With his sister, last I heard. He lost the house and the settlement. He's working part-time, and he's already dating someone new. I blinked. That was fast. Brooke shrugged. Patterns don't break just because life collapses. He'll keep lying, keep juggling, keep pretending, until someone else answers another phone call. I didn't know if that made me sad or simply resigned. Do you ever think about warning her? I asked. Brooke shook her head. Would you have believed it if someone warned you? I hesitated, then shook my head. Probably not. There it is, she said simply. The truth usually doesn't land until you're already bleeding. We stood in silence for a moment, watching Emma run across the yard with a cupcake smashed in one hand. She's doing okay? I asked softly. Brooke nodded. Better than okay. I keep things simple with her. I tell her mommy is working on things, that daddy is learning how to be a better daddy. And my therapist said that's exactly right. That's beautiful, I whispered. Brooke pressed her lips together. It's honest without crushing her. I nodded. Honesty, the one thing Kyle had never given either of us. As the afternoon stretched into evening, more people trickled out, waving goodbye. Brooke carried trash bags and wiped cake from the counter while I helped gather stray toys. You didn't have to stay this long, she said, voice warm. I wanted to, I replied. She paused, then said quietly, I meant it earlier. I don't think I could have done this without you. I felt a strange warmth settle in my chest. Not romantic, not dramatic, just human. A connection born from ruin, but a connection nonetheless. You would have made it through, I said. You're stronger than you think. Brooke smiled softly. So are you. We stood there a moment longer, two women who hadn't planned to be in each other's lives, but were. And then she said, Do you want to stay for dinner? We're just doing leftovers. Nothing fancy, but you're welcome. I hesitated, thinking about my quiet apartment, my empty fridge, the echo of solitude waiting there for me. Then I nodded. I'd like that. Hours later, I drove home with my windows cracked open to the summer air. The sky had turned a deep blue, the kind that made the world feel soft around the edges. For the first time in months, I didn't feel hollow. I didn't feel like the other woman. I didn't feel like a mistake. I didn't feel like a shattered version of myself. I felt like someone healing, someone rebuilding, someone free. The truth was messy. Love had been a lie. But what came after? The unexpected friendship, the quiet strength, the ability to breathe again, felt more real than anything Kyle ever gave me. And as I pulled into my driveway, I felt a strange, almost peaceful certainty. I had not lost anything worth keeping, and I had gained something I never expected, a reminder that even in the wreckage, people can find each other and rise. Some endings aren't explosive. Some are quiet, steady steps forward. Mine was one of those, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough.